Hello everyone and welcome to episode 26 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, a wise man who once came up with a witty comment. Joining me this fine recording session are one Stephen Howard,
who usually also gets up and leaves the small council meeting when Sir Gregor Clegane walks in, but usually just used the restroom.
Amanda Howard,
the other sword in the morning.
one Nick Castillo.
Past is written, the ink is dry.
And last, but certainly never least, Gary Delaney.
Finally accepting that if Tormund Giantsbane saw my pecker, he also would know I'm not a god.
Only Gary.
Calls it like it is.
I mean, yeah, at least he's honest about it.
It's true.
Honesty. That's what this podcast is about. True honesty.
Yes, telling the honest truth about characters like the hero of the revolution and Joffrey.
Oh, God, yeah, right? That's all Gary does. Gary spits truth.
Hot fire.
Hot fire.
All right, we're on to episode 6. Oh, sorry. Season 6, episode 3, Oathbreaker. Oathbreaker is Daenerys arrives in Vaes Dothrak. Sam and Gilly sail for Hornhill. Arya trains as no one. Varys finds information on the Sons of the Harpy. Ramsay receives a gift. Tommen meets with the High Sparrow, and at Castle Black, a miracle occurs. So basically, I'm just going to start it off with the big miracle that does occur here in Castle Black, is Jon Snow's alive. I mean, we kind of saw him wake up at the end of the episode last time there, but now it's official. He's alive. He's back. And
Rated.
Okay, so does anyone else want to know what Jon would have done if the Onion Knight hadn't stopped him from running out of the room as he wakes up from death? Because he is going to start running somewhere. I want to know where he would have gone, what that would have been like.
I feel like he'd have, crashed into something or fallen down. Someone would have stopped him. He'd be fine.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I want to know what would happen.
Isn't he naked? I was going to say,
Yes.
he hasn't used his legs in a couple days, and he's naked. I feel like he'd run outside, and he'd probably slip on the icy stairs and fall down the stairs. And
He'd be dead just one more time.
Naked Jon Snow just making snow angels at the bottom of the stairs.
then you have some Benny Hill music playing in the background.
Sorry, that's my contribution right there. Sorry, what was the real thing here?
I guess my first thing, it's not really much to kind of throw as a deep philosophical question out to everyone, but Davos gives one hell of a pep talk there to Jon after he comes back there. Because Jon is basically wondering, why did I get brought back? Why me? And everything like that. And I failed. That's why I'm dead. Everything I did led to my failure. And Davos is like, well, good. Go fail again there, basically. Steven.
Right, that's what I was just about to say. That is such a fantastic pep talk. Just I've already failed once. Well, that's great. Go fail again. Just oh crap, I wish someone told me that in high school or something. This guy should be I don't know, just a motivational speaker for the ages. Just pulling that out of his back pocket after seeing someone raise from the dead. I admire his composure to no end. It is a straight, because if one of you guys got stabbed to death and then rose to life in front of me, my first thing would have been, what the fuck is fucking, and there would be no eloquence. There would be zero eloquence.
I mean, I unfortunately would have some eloquence, but...
Okay, define eloquence here, buddy.
Harry is known for his eloquence above all things.
I was gonna ask, I kind of sort of skipped past or was still warming up my brain when I started that, when the Onion Knights started talking. But I feel like they also have been giving him a lot more lines. They've sort of made him a bigger character instead of, I think up to this point, that's probably doubled the number of lines he's had in the whole show up to this point.
He's definitely gone from being a background character to now definitely a side character for sure in the show. Nick?
Mhm.
Even when he was Stannis' hand of the king, like, it felt like nothing he said was put any worth to it. Like, now, I don't know if it's by virtue of being one of the only survivors left, but like what he says is starting to matter, and people are like starting to condense down.
I think a lot of the stuff that Davos has always had merit. It's just he gets overshadowed by the people with the name, right? Or the people who have the privilege or position. It's like, oh, I'm going to listen to the king who's standing next to you rather than the random onion knight who's been spitting wisdom since, Blackwater Bay. I think that there's a lot more to Davos, and it's maybe not necessarily that he's saying more. It's just like what he's saying. People are like, oh, yeah, you've been through some stuff. You've got worth to your words.
I kind of agree with that, and I think of it maybe in a slightly different way, in that I do think he is more important because he's paid more attention to right now, and he's paid more attention to because he doesn't have that prick Stannis as his, overlord. He's now has just other people who are willing to listen to him. I mean, Jon Snow would be willing to listen to a rock if it, had some sort of wisdom to it. So he's obviously going to listen to the Onion Knight, and
He was as dead as a doornail. Of course, he'd listen to a rock.
See, that's my point.
Jon Snow knows nothing.
Is Sir Davos actually a full-blown knight? Or was he knighted by Robert, or was he knighted by Stannis?
Stannis, I think.
Well, then he's not a real knight, because Stannis was never really a king. He's only a knight if Stannis is still alive.
No, because
before then,
he was.
Knight can make a knight.
Yeah, well, no, but I think that he was knighted. He was knighted after his defense of Storm's End, right? And that was during the war previous. So he was knighted for the war previous, which obviously not only would Stannis could do it, but also what's his name would have to sign off on it. I forget what his name is. The king who drank himself to death.
Robert Baratheon.
Thank you.
Baratheon, yeah.
I also think, isn't there some merit, though, to the idea that a knight can knight another knight?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Like, Sir Arthur Dayne is the one who
explained
knighted
in a different episode that's down the line that no one really believes in anymore, so...
Yeah, I think that a knight can make another knight, but yeah, also, Gary, your knighthood is not tied to the livelihood of the current ruler, because once Jaime killed the Mad King, he's been called the knight ever since. It's not like he's just suddenly is no longer a knight because his king is dead.
Steven.
I wanted to figure it out, so I did look it up, and yes, apparently in this world, it is a knight can make another knight, and it's not just because of that one scene with Jaime, but apparently it's just straight lore in the game. So that's a real thing. I was wrong.
In the British monarchy, only the queen can knight. Or the king, or whatever the fuck we're on now.
In the British monarchy, the queen can move any way. The knight can only move like in an L shape.
I got that reference.
I'll award you some points there, Steven. I'll award you some points. Bad chess puns for the win.
There's other examples in the book mentioned of like people of different knights mentioning who knighted them or whatnot. Like Sir Barristan, he wondered he could knight people, and he was debating it because some of your prestige comes from the knight who knighted you. So you don't just want to make them willy-nilly. Kings and I don't know about queens, but the kings and stuff. But that's why the North doesn't have knights, because they don't have. They also are required to like stand sigil in a sept for like 24 hours. And they don't have septs in the North. Not much, at least. They believe in the old gods.
There's something about standing sigils. I don't.
The old gods.
Standing guard in a sigil there, Gary, or a sept. I think you said basically, Amanda, right? Is that what they would have to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that covers my first point that I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to throw it over to Steven there.
Oh, don't do that. I wasn't prepared. So I guess one of the scenes that Amanda and I were talking about a fair amount was when what's her name goes into Vase Dothrak.
Daenerys.
Thank you, Daenerys. I can remember Vase Dothrak. I can't remember the word Daenerys because that's how life works. But anyways,
Your favorite character? You forgot the name of your favorite character.
yeah, basically. But I'm pretty sure that Vase Dothrak is described in the books as a settlement of destroyed monuments. Because every time these the Khalasars go and destroy civilization, they go take its best monument and bring it back to Vase Dothrak. And so I was really excited to see this. I remember the first time. And then they walk into the camp. It's like 2 horses. That's what you get. And I was, out of everything that this movie could have skimped on, I have so much money now, and they won't put in that. It was kind of offensive to me. Tyler.
So it's even funnier too, because I believe a bunch of the Dothraki mention wanting to bring idols into the city of Vase Dothrak throughout the episodes, and there are no idols at all from other sacked cities, at least that we see. I mean, yes, they obviously, if they're going to mention that detail in the show, they should maybe back it up with a little bit of imagery in there, but they don't.
Yeah.
I would agree. There's not a lot of depth in that city. Like, it's very much
no.
It reminds me of an old Western movie, like where it was shot on a back lot somewhere in Hollywood, and you only have one main street, and that's where all of the scenes are shot.
Just with a different cardboard setup.
Yeah, that's what that reminds me of.
Yeah, and you kind of start to realize as soon as you get to Vase Dothrak, you're not going to be here very long because there's not much to it. There's no depth to the place at all. It's purely a place for people to keep moving through.
They don't set it up well like the city of Dorne.
Like this, like the city of Dorne. I remember that one city with all my livelihood, and thank God it was never a country.
Did they show most Dothrak in the opening map?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I thought it was like 2 horses touching hooves or something.
Yes.
Which I don't even know if you saw that statue, did you?
Yes,
in the actual...
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's the one you do. The only one you do.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only statue you see.
Which also makes me wonder where they pillaged that one from. Like someone just with 2 giant horses, and they're like, "This is it."
Back in a more civilized Dothraki age.
They enslaved hundreds of stonemasons to make these horsey statues, and then they murdered them all.
David and I when we were talking about that specific scene, I was also mentioning it's strange the number of people in the Khalasar that aren't even riding horses. Like they specifically mentioned in the very first season that they regard people who don't ride as just the lowest of the low. Because Viserys at one point, was offered a cart instead of when Dany took his horse away. And yet, how few people does it show actually riding horses? How do you keep up with the Khalasar?
That was a very good point. Because you look at the Khalasar that's going into Vase Dothrak, and there is maybe 1 to 15 people riding horses. Everyone else is on foot. And it's just, I mean, we're getting back to Gary's favorite phrase. Poor, and it's not poor writing at this point, but poor screenplay. They didn't read the book. I don't know.
Planning. I'm going to go with
planning. There you go.
What's that called? A set dressing, or how they there's someone specifically who their job is to make worlds and make props in the backgrounds of the shots, and I'm sure they were doing shit somewhere else this episode. Also, aren't these are? I remember Game of Thrones is shot in multiple continents. So I'm guessing that wherever they were shooting most Dothrak, they were like, "Oh well, we're in this town for a week, and then we're flying everyone to, wherever the hell Marine is."
Yeah,
Vase Dothrak, Gary. Vase Dothrak.
I don't need to know the name anymore, Tyler. We're never going to go back there again.
Fair statement. So I guess the second thing that I had, and this is just a little lighthearted one. I always love the interactions between Why are names hard? Why are names so hard? Between Tyrion Lannister and Grey
Varys?
Worm and what's her name?
Missandei.
Oh, Missandei.
Yeah, Missandei. I love it when they're in a room by themselves, trying to make conversation, and Tyrion is just trying as hard as he can, and they're just almost willfully not going along with it. It's really funny. It's kind of refreshing when I watch it. I enjoy it.
I think it's just sort of a reflection of like he doesn't know how to be in a social situation where you're not like trying to kiss ass and like show off your wealth, whereas they have no, like, they're just happy not to be slaves anymore. They're just like they're both in a place of honor in the palace, but they don't have any experience with diplomacy other than Missandei is used to translating for evil people. Nick?
The game that Tyrion tries to get them to play is the game that he played back in season 2 with Bronn and Shay in his tent about saying something that's false, and if it is false, then you drink or he drinks. But that's the part of it there is that the company he has now are all honorable people or they don't drink. So he's like, I don't know what we'll do. And to that lightheartedness, Steven, I agree. I thought that was very fun to sprinkle that in there. He tries to innocently, totally naive, say, we'll play a fun game. And Missandei's all like cautious, the Maesters used to have us play a game. Just the girls, It's like, oh God, no, not that. It was pretty good. I like those moments of levity. Sprinkled throughout the rest of the story with everything else crazy going on. Amanda, did you have something?
I just think that I enjoyed those conversations, but I do find it funny that everything that Tyrion says to them, they're like, they only see one scenario ahead of them, which is just a fight. They've come this far, and that's basically all they've been able to do each time was fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
was that everything, Steven?
Yeah, those are my 2 big points.
Okay. Nick, go ahead.
I really liked the kind of the scene with going back to Jon Snow, where he's woken back up. Like, what happens? He's let out in the courtyard, and everybody kind of sees, like this awe look on everybody's face of the wildlings who don't know him that well, but they knew he died or heard he died, and now here he is walking around. And Ed has this really great interaction where he looks at him and he goes, "Is that really you in there?" Like he's been with him through so much. It's a really great contrast to they have an interaction later on as well in this episode too, between the two of them about duty and what comes next. Kind of tying into what we were talking about with Davos's comment about good go fail again. It's really good. I like those episodes where the magic happens or the dragons happen, and then it's how do the average everyday people respond to those seemingly larger than life scenarios. Again, adding that moment of levity where Tormund goes, "I've seen your pecker. You're not a god." It's a really nice scene that shows that people still believe Jon is who he is. Yeah. Not like he's again. Here, I'll contrast this. I wasn't really planning to make this point, but the second everybody else sees him, they go, "Congrats, you're back, Jon. We missed you." Whereas the red woman, whose name I just spaced off,
It's not only me.
Melisandre. What?
I said it's not only me forgetting names.
Where Melisandre sees him, and the first thing she says is, "Stannis was not the prince was promised, but somebody has to be." She's already throwing destiny and fate at him as soon as he comes back. You were brought back for a reason. So it's this, okay, does he take up this mantle or does he not? Why do you think he was brought back? I don't know who was first. Tyler.
So yeah, that's my big thing there too. Is like she's sitting there trying to poke and prod at Jon of like, what did you see? What's on the other side? And he's just like, there's nothing. There's nothing on the other side. So it almost feels like it's kind of just another, I don't know, shock or jab at her religion. They're basically not having anything. But then she spins it around of like, well, the Lord of Light must have something for you to bring you back, some purpose for you. Stephen.
Yeah, that was I have a second point, but that was actually very interesting to me too. Is John seems to, he doesn't say I don't know or I just woke up sort of thing. There's obviously, he went somewhere. He implies he went somewhere and there was nothing there, and so it was emptiness, whatever, however you want to describe that death. He was there, and that was it was very interesting because you don't get a lot of takes on solid mysticism in this book. It's all kind of implied mysticism, or you see it secondhand sort of stuff, but you don't have characters directly experience it. What I was going to say is I also did like the kind of cinematography of when John is walking out. You see as he's walking down that little line, everyone moves away from him. Tormund moves directly to him, and that's kind of saying, hey, Tormund still is there. And then you have all the way at the end of this journey down all these people is his friend Ed, who's standing there like a rock. And there's a lot, I feel like there's a fair amount of symbolism. I could be reading into it, but as I was watching it, I'm going, this is symbolic. They planned out exactly what they were going to do here, and for a reason. It's not just, this is going to look cool. It's, this kind of has symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
I will moderately agree with Nick that Tormund's comment was, sort of funny. However, I do not like that Nick completely effed up the line, which was like, I've seen your pecker. What kind of god would have a pecker that small?
Only Gary would have that line memorized too.
Hey, the first note I
He's
wrote
from Boston.
Yeah.
down.
Senior Pekka.
Senior pecker.
Your Pekka. It's a wicked Pekka.
Same with Castak. Same with Castak.
Castak. Carl Stark.
Carl Stark.
I was just gonna note that I was wondering if maybe that interaction is specifically there to kind of bring some levity in what is an otherwise very serious conversations that bookend it. Like, he has a long conversation with the Onion Knight, and then he walks over to Ed, and Ed is very, like, that conversation is very, very serious. And I'm wondering if that was just like, they just needed Tormund to do something. Like, they needed Tormund to acknowledge that it happened, but they needed something to break up the, like, what the fuck of the world. I don't know. What are other people's thoughts? Tyler?
I'd say, yeah, it's kind of there with a little bit of levity just because that's kind of the way they're slowly transitioning Tormund's character to be just a little bit more humorous, but also to kind of show there is the bond there of John and the trust with the wildlings there. And obviously Tormund is the figurehead of the wildling group there. So him kind of showing respect towards John kind of shows that there's a mutual respect from the wildlings towards John. Nick?
I can get behind that. I had a point earlier. I forgot what it was, but I remembered it now. I think earlier on in our podcast, when were talking about the shadow demon that killed Renly Baratheon, I think we've made the point, or at least I feel like I've made the point before, that we know the old gods and the new gods. There's a lot of talk about things that are like the mysticism that's it's implied, but you don't actually see it. With John coming back from the dead, there is something magical that is actually happening, and it appears to have only happened because Melisandre did the chant or did some sort of prayer mysticism over his body. And so, of all the religions or gods that are out there, I agree with Tyler. It's sort of this, hey, I exist, but maybe there's some part of me that no one understands because it's not the way you think it is. Maybe a symbolism of this story is not going to end the way you think it is, like that classic phrase we could keep going back to. That there is something magical, deeper going on with at least the Red God. That there's something there, or at least that they exist in some capacity, because there's clearly something magical going on there.
Well, I will say that the Red God isn't the only one who's had. I mean, we've already seen who was the flaming swordsman. He was brought back to life in front of us.
That's the Red God,
Um,
though.
Yeah, no, well, that's what I'm saying. So we've already seen like the
Okay.
Red God show
That's
that they are
possible.
going to exist. You've seen that the old gods exist, and that's from the people of the trees, or what is it? The children of the trees,
The Children of the
and
Forest.
Oh, right.
thank you, children of the forest, and you have the three-eyed raven, and you have kind of an implication from there that there's something mysticism going on there. So I'm not that shocked that it kind of proves that this mysticism does exist. I really do think the shocking thing is that the mysticism happens directly to a main character, which I'm trying to think about. I don't believe this type of mystic thing happens to a main character anywhere else in the book, or maybe the movie.
What about the three-eyed raven guy, Bran?
Or Danny's surviving the funeral pyre there.
Oh, I forgot about Danny.
Yeah, you always
But
forget about Danny.
Forgot
She's
about
your favorite
Danny.
character, and you always forget about her.
I was gonna say I'll write off the three-eyed raven because that's I don't know. I'll write that off. But
You're right.
the mystic thing, and you're right, Danny. It's not explained, but it does happen to her, and it goes through. I completely forgot about that, and this is one of the only other cases that I can think of where something mystic directly happens to a main character. It's not a main character seeing it happen to someone else.
Is the clarification? Is the Danny fire immunity thing something all Targaryens have again, or it's just like a select few are the unburned?
So this is something I was going to bring up a little later here in our discussion here, but it's not. I think it's been from some interviews from George before. It was only meant to be a one-time thing from the books there.
She's the only one who has this. Okay.
No, not she's the only one who has it. Even it was only supposed to be a one-time thing that she does. It's not supposed to be now she's just immune to fire. It's just through the circumstances of this one event that happened there, basically made her not able to be burned alive there in that funeral pyre.
Well, that's interesting. That completely changes her character.
Between burning the witch and reawakening the dragons and her love of her life, there's supposed to be some temporary magic.
Yeah, sequence of events lined up or something like that. I'm pretty for sure that that's the theories and not the theories. Sorry, the stuff I remember reading back when was George had kind of come out and said that this was only a one-time deal, at least in the
You can
books.
only use that.
Wouldn't that
power 1d4 times per episode?
There you go. I was going to say, wouldn't that be a funny thing in the books if that's how she actually ends up going? Lights herself on fire in the middle of Vase Dothrak thinking she's going to survive and burns down with everyone.
Well, that'd
Roll
be a
credits.
disappointing end to the book series.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
I am the mother of dragons, breaker of chains, the Ow!
Ow, that hurts. Oh, God.
There were Targaryens in the history of the series that burned other Targaryens or used their dragons, especially in the Dance of Dragons.
Right.
So who are we on? Was it Nick's point?
That was Nick. Yep. Did you have another topic, Nick?
The other one I was talking about, I think it's later in this episode, but is this also the one where Sansa comes back, or is that the next episode?
Next episode.
Next episode.
Okay, I'll get to that later. I really focused on some of those interactions, the mysticism in this one. Ooh.
Okay. Did you have anything else then, Nick?
Not right now. I'll probably jump on something later. I'm trying to remember what the rest of my notes were.
Okay, let's see if we can squeeze in a couple of questions from Amanda.
I never actually paid attention to this part of the thing before, but when Ned Stark and Arthur Dayne, we've heard his name before, I think, in the show. But he's the Sword of the Morning. He's one of the Kingsguard. He takes on 4 people at once in this thing, and I didn't really pay attention to this part because you can see him fighting 4 people at once, but I knew what was supposed to happen. And yet, like, he succeeds through it. He slaughters at least 2 of those, and you see Ned Stark's face go, "Oh, I'm gonna die." He does not. Like, if Arthur Dayne had not been taken out, like, Howland Reed stabs him in the neck from behind. But otherwise, Ned Stark was going to die there. Bran mentions he's heard the story a million times of how Ned won. If that's the case, what was the story, and why did Ned tell him that, like, oh, we won? He never told him how exactly. Was Ned ashamed of how they won? Gary?
I don't think he was ashamed. I think Bran was ashamed or sad because he envisioned his father to be a much greater hero. But I think for Ned just watched this one dude like just massacre all of his men after there was an opportunity that they were having a civilized conversation. Is like, just so you know, the Mad King is dead. Like, the prince is dead. Like, you don't have to fight us. I'm just here for my sister. And then they, like, I guess it's going down. He puts on the helmet. But I'm sure Ned, as he's one of 2 people that survived to tell this story, I'm sure somebody's got to take credit for killing that guy. Why not be Ned, the King of the North? Nick?
I think honorable Ned, who always does the right and just thing, would feel dishonored knowing that he had to have somebody stab his opponent in that sense, one-on-one in the back, and get that kill from him. I think that was something that he looks down on. He feels, that wasn't justified. He didn't actually beat him. The way I always thought that story went down is that then Howland Reed went on and probably said, oh yeah, Ned killed him, or Ned was able to give the finishing blow, and that's how the story, generated from there. I don't think Ned would tell the story about how he won if Ned knew he didn't officially. That seems against how his character is when he's older.
Yeah, I'm basically going to agree there with Nick's points there of Ned being the honorable person that he is. It seems dishonorable to have lost, or to basically have a sword fight finished that way. And then Howland Reed kind of being a lord under basically Ned's realm there or whatever. He would obviously want to try and put some of the victory on his lord there of the north there, so they kind of they maybe don't like embellish the story there, but like they leave a lot of the key points out of like Ned got the finishing blow, which he kind of did. They defeated Sir Arthur Dayne in combat. They technically did, and I mean also too, it wasn't really much of a civilized conversation there at the beginning, Gary. It was more of a very antagonist conversation because Ned is not there to fight him. Ned is there to find his sister.
He shows up with four or five dudes, right? If he's there just to have the conversation and be like, just so you know, I don't want to fight you. But he's got his entourage at his back ready to draw swords.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, I feel like he had already fought him. Like, it wasn't that cheap of a shot. Like, if the other guy would have hit him in the back of the head with his own sword, is that a fair fight? This dude is, the Lord of the Morning is already fighting 4 dudes at once and holding his own. I think getting stabbed in the back mid-battle is par for the course for somebody who decided that's the kind of world, that's the kind of battle he wanted to go into. Also, going back to like swordsmanship, I'm wondering if it's also kind of implied in this scene that Ned is probably mid-20s. Like, he's been married. He's obviously married by this point and gone off to war. But the Sword of the Morning, I don't know what your opinion, that maybe is somebody of the level of like Sir Barristan, like someone in their 30s or 40s. So a true trained swordsman, whereas Ned is just went off to war like kind of after he was trained as a knight, but not a battle-hardened knight. Tyler?
I think it's mentioned a couple of times in the show and definitely in the books there too, of like when you look at ranking the fighters of Westeros, they're at roughly this time in the history there. Sir Arthur Dayne is always put at the top there, I believe, of the greatest swordsman in Westeros there. I think even Barristan Selmy maybe mentioned that multiple times of how he thought Sir Arthur Dayne was, or was it Jamie who always looked up to Sir Arthur Dayne then too during like tournaments and stuff? I can't remember from the books there.
It may have been Jamie, just because I think Arthur Dane's who knighted him,
Okay.
but
So-
I'm not sure. But
so
there's
yeah.
definitely other mentions of him.
Yeah, so Arthur Dayne is definitely older, but he has definitely the reputation to go with it all.
Whereas, do you know what I mean? Like, but Ned is not a, he's not a battle-hardened general at this point. He's just a young guy who's, going to war for his, like, still of a place of honor. He's going to avenge his dad and his brother, but he's not his dad or his brother, who probably have seen some stuff.
Had some victories, like they mentioned. We looked for you on the Trident. They did have the Battle of the Trident, where Rhaegar Targaryen was defeated by Robert Baratheon with his warhammer, back when Robert was in shape and could do so. And so Ned probably was able to fight in that battle. So he's seen some combat, yeah, but he's probably not seen dozens of different wars.
All right.
I do like that. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
I do like that scene too. Do like that scene just for the three-eyed raven kind of coaxing Bran, where Bran can walk in these dreams. They're very vivid. He feels like he wants to go see where that history leads or what's going on. The three-eyed raven is trying to pull him back, like we saw a little bit in a previous review where he saw his young father and his brother Benjen fighting in the courtyard, and his sister Lyanna, which is the first time we really kind of focus more on Lyanna's story. You see this story now too, where his brother's trying to go find where his sister is. Maybe she's in that area. I think it's called the Tower of Joy is where they are. And so there's this underplay of, I want to go see what my parents were like when they were younger, or what's going on here, or what's the story that he sees what happens, like we talked about with Arthur Dayne and his father. Like, what else is something that maybe history has misconstrued? And the line that I said at the beginning when the introductions were, the three-eyed raven says, the past is written. You can't change it. Like, you can't go back and review it or do something to make it different. And Bran has this moment where he tries to call to his father, and he says dad or father, I think. And Ned stops, like almost like Ned heard him or reacted to him. And I think the three-eyed raven says something like, he may have heard the wind. We don't know what he saw. But you cannot stay in the past. He said when they bring him back into the tree area, the three-eyed raven says something to the effect of, if you stay in the past too long, you'll never come back. And so, great power comes great responsibility. Agree?
I was gonna ask if maybe part of this three-eyed raven training is trying to disassociate Bran from his family's history, because if he's too associated with being a Stark, he might be more apt to using his power for revenge or for personal gain or the gain of his house. Whereas I think by the three-eyed raven sort of stopping him several times when he really just wants to get to know his aunt who he's never met, his dad when he was young, like he has to kind of shut those doors on Bran, because that's not what the three-eyed raven, that is not what he's being trained to be. He's being trained to be the seer for all mankind, not just for his own family. Also, on Nick's point of Bran shouting the word father, correcting Nick for the second time this episode on not misquoting things, do you think that Ned is hearing his son, but do you think Ned is hearing the voice of Robb? his son who was born at that point. Like, because if all you hear the wind say is "Father," you're like, "Huh, I have a kid. I wonder if that's some sort of spiritual beckoning to bring me back to Winterfell." Amanda?
Well, I don't have an answer to that question, though I do think that perhaps you need to start keeping a tally of the number of times that you correct Nick.
No.
I'd have a new piece of paper.
All he gets is those two. All he gets.
No, I agreed with what Nick said, that like he's showing the three-eyed raven's trying to show Bran the stuff. He's trying to teach him, and he's trying to keep him from being like too far into it. But I do have to question the wisdom of this teacher who is showing this kid a very tantalizing piece of his family's history and then just cutting it off like in the very beginning of it. I'd be kind of annoyed too. I'd kind of want to see a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Could have shown him anything else boring about his family, but he showed specifically that thing. Showed him that there was more to the story than he knew, and then said, "And we're done."
Or you could have
That's how he
shown
keeps
him
him on the
Robert Baratheon or the Lannisters or somebody else, but
Maybe that's how you keep him on the hook.
Keep him wanting more.
Just to say,
Yeah.
I actually,
Give him a taste.
yeah, no, I actually agree with Gary on this. I think it's I do think that the Three-Eyed Raven is trying to create some distance between Bran and his representation as a Stark, and I think at this is borne out by events towards the end of the show, but he is supposed to be the Three-Eyed Raven for humanity, and there's a huge temptation, just like Jon had the temptation to use the Night's Watch to save Winterfell. There'd be a huge temptation for Bran to use his power also to somehow help the Starks, and I think that's something that he's trying to head off.
I think when they bring him back and Bran's like crawling across the floor to the Three-Eyed Raven, Three-Eyed Raven says, "I was waiting for you." You know, he really stresses the importance of who he wants Bran to be, because Bran says, "I don't want to be you," and the Three-Eyed Raven says, "I don't want you to be me." But then he says, "I was waiting for you." Something like that. Isn't that right, Gary? I want to make sure you agree with me.
no. He
Correct.
says that you're not going to be here forever. Because Bran says, "I don't want to hang out in a tree forever," and the Three-Eyed Raven says, "You're not going to be in the tree forever." 3 times this episode.
I think
Gonna just keep
Nick's
him
point was
for-
also discussed by the Three-Eyed Raven, though. But I could be wrong.
Gary, do you have to print off a new piece of paper every episode so that you can keep track of how many times Steven agrees with you?
No, this is the same. I just keep a running tally. I don't need
Okay.
to. I don't need to kill that many trees.
Goodness.
All right,
It's still on me. That's all I had at the moment.
I think it was Amanda for her questioning.
Oh, yeah.
I have a couple more points, but does anyone else want to go with theirs?
Well,
All right, I'll keep going.
Yours.
Back
Okay.
to Steven's favorite character, Daenerys, the one whose name he can never remember. It's not like she's an incredibly central figure or anything. I do think it was kind of funny that she pretty much waltzed into the Dosh Khaleen, despite them not doing anything to her specifically, and just starts threatening them. "I'll have your heads." They did.
Person she is, Amanda.
The Calls decided to return for some celebration and decide which cities will be sacked or spared, which I also have to wonder, how does this fit into being a call? Because Khal Drogo decided to attack, was it Lazarene, with no input or output. So I thought that was kind of a strange thing. Like, was that just a coincidence for the plot, or was that actually a thing?
I think that just was not hubris. What is the word I'm looking for? Just a little bit of far-fetchedness. I think she's just trying to talk up how powerful this council here is. While when you get out into the field, the council doesn't matter at all. Because I completely agree with you. When the Khalasars tend to get out into the field, they're their own units, and they're not going to be told to do by anything. I mean, what are you going to do? Have a horse rider going the entire way? Which, I mean, I guess you could. The Mongols did it, but that's not what they do. So I think that she's just talking them up a little bit.
I am a bit. I'm kind of the belief that some of those characters introduced in the Lady Cave are just more characters for you to identify in the next episode when you need crowd members that you identify. They're
Real quick and say that it's a she shed. It's not a lady cave.
It's a lady. It's a lady temple. I don't know what it is. But I don't like it. I think it's just supposed to be some plot, like some exposition dump that, you know, multiple people telling Daenerys that, like, this is a bad idea. Like, you are full of yourself, and like this is your place in the world. Like, don't get too big headed. Like, we don't care. Your Cal died. This is the society you live in now. And it's either you live here in our society or you get raped and murdered. Like, that's A or B. But that's my opinion. Anyway. That's all
I did just think the part of her being taken into their, captured and taken to them, is kind of the most, like, a normal woman of that, like, noble woman would have acted like, how dare you touch me, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really, so far everything Daenerys has done, they keep trying to make her seem like she's more, she's extra special, she's all this. She acted the exact same as, like, it sounds bad to say whiny princess, but that's what she sounded like. She was really angry. Like, I get it. I wouldn't be happy either. But she just waltzes in there and threatens them and doesn't seem to really have a plan at this point.
You suppose that Lady Temple is just full of former princesses?
It is.
So
They
maybe that's why
say that. Yeah.
Like,
that's what it is.
But you mean like people with attitude who used to be somebody important, and then their husband died, and they realized, I'm nothing in this society anymore. I'm just an old widow now. Like,
I think we have to keep this conversation up to see how many words Gary can come up with for the place.
She shed.
The she shed.
Hag Cave? The Hag Hut?
I like Hag Hut. I like Lady Temple, personally. Sounds more revered.
More reverent.
Do I use the B word? The B word's bathhouse? I don't know. Another B word. Brothel?
Bungalow.
Bungalow. Better word.
The Biatch Bungalow.
Biatch Bungalow. I don't know what the count is. Anyway, we can go back to Amanda for serious topics.
My other point is a completely different one, more of an observation. Listening to the High Sparrow talk to, I think it was Marjorie at this point. I just thought it was interesting. At one point, he told her, "It's not what I want; it's what the gods want."
Next episode.
Next episode.
Oh, I'm sorry. How is that in the next episode?
He is talking to Tommen though in this episode.
Maybe it's Tommen then. I wrote it on this one. Whatever. He says it's not what I want; it's what the gods want. And I just thought that was interesting because in this case, it suddenly reminded me of Viserys telling Daenerys, "You woke the dragon." Like it's almost reminiscent of like people abusing something, abusing other people, abusing their power, whatever it is. It's not me hurting you. It's this.
Oh, sure.
So he says the line there. He speaks a line there that kind of rings true from previous episodes. The crown and the faith are twin pillars. He repeats that line that Cersei had told to him earlier when she was originally trying to recruit him. So the question I kind of had that stemmed off of that is, is he playing like a part, or is he like truly this devout person there that thinks, the religion and everything is the correct path to go? Or, like I said, is he playing a part seeking power? Because now he's basically using stuff that was said to him, and obviously, he's talking to Tommen, who we all can probably admit he's a little bit easily to manipulate, and Tommen is just, you can see him kind of changing his attitude there from when he's originally coming in to talk to the High Sparrow.
So I want to say that I think that the answer is yes. I think he is both. He is that devout. He is honestly believes everything he is saying, and at the same time, he's willing to do anything that he needs to get through with it. So I think that both characterizations that you have there can be the same. That's what kind of makes him so absolutely dangerous, right?
He drank the Kool-Aid.
He made the Kool-Aid. He didn't
He is
drink
the
the Kool-Aid. He
Kool-Aid.
made it. He is Jim Jones.
Kool-Aid man. He's the Kool-Aid man. He breaks
He is the
through
one who
walls.
knocks.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do you have anything else then, Amanda?
No, I think that's all my points.
All right. Gary, on to you, sir.
The Crusher of Dreams is here to stay. I noted, and I'm sad that no one else noted it, Maester Pycelle in the small council meeting is talking lots of smack about Sir Gregor. Lots of smack. And he walks in the room and he stops mid-sentence. However, with the power of subtitles, you see there's a subtitle for fart. So literally, Sir Gregor walks in and it's implied that he shits himself when he sees Sir
Yes.
Gregor.
There's a sound clip there where he actually has a little squeaker come out.
Yeah, like never caught that. That is so good. It's it reminds me of sort of the level of the stormtrooper hitting his head in Star Wars, like something that just does not fit and just seemed like it was just sort of a funny sound effect to sneak in there. But that I rewound a couple times because I was like, did I actually just say fart in the subtitles? Like that's interesting. To Arya, when she's training with the Faceless Men, on the rewatch I sort of caught that she was Jaqen H'ghar hands her the water from the pool in the center of the temple, and on a rewatch, once you know and kind of think about it, you can see kind of the fear on her face because she's seen other people drink this water and die. So I don't know if that water is supposed to be a symbolism of like true faith in the faceless god, that like if you don't believe, you're gonna drink it and you're gonna die. But if as she did believe, she became the unknown. God, I forgot what they call them.
If you believe in the Kool-Aid enough, the Kool-Aid will heal you.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because if you really think about it, like she's being handed water but is she just at the point where if it killed her, like she's not really out anything, she's already blind in a place that no one knows where she's at, like no one will ever know if she died there. She's the lost ark.
If I correct you, Gary, does that take one of mine from you away?
No. What are you going to correct me about, Nick?
Because she doesn't like drink it thinking that she has nothing to lose. The line is that Jaqen H'ghar says, if a girl is truly no one, she has nothing to fear. So it's a true test of her faith that if she drinks it, it's because she believes in what she's actually doing. I see the panel nodding their heads. Consensus?
I agree.
Been corrected.
I award Nick no points. Anyway. Then my final point is about the Jon execution at the end at the Night's Watch. On the rewatch, I sort of question this because he could have just like been reborn and like, yeah, F it, I'm out of here. Instead, he stays at the Night's Watch just long enough to take revenge, and then he decides he's gonna leave. Like, is that sort of like he actually wakes up with the intent of revenge? Tyler?
So I get to utter my final fuck Sir Alistair Thorne moment here because that bastard is fucking gone. Although it's kind of interesting in his final words, he's like, if if I had the chance to do it over again, knowing now where I ended up, I still would have done it, or basically stating that he still would have done it. It's like, why?
You hope that he had the he was strong enough to still do it or something.
But
I believe the correct answer is that he says, I would have hoped I'd still been brave enough to make the same choice.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But yeah, like that was something I kind of questioned there at the end as well, of like, okay, Jon comes back, assumes the role of Lord Commander for just long enough to execute these people that killed him, and then he's like, okay, I'm done being Lord Commander. My watch has ended officially here because I died. He served his life. He gave his life for the Night's Watch, essentially. So it's kind of like, is he just getting away with... I mean, is he getting away with murder there, essentially? But I mean, like, it's a medieval society there and everything like that, so... Nick?
No, I don't think he's getting away with murder because we saw him execute Sir Janos Slynt for insubordination.
What?
I would line up killing the Lord Commander as insubordination. So I think that he's not necessarily getting away with murder. It's just this is his duty now, is to take care of traitors. I really wanted to highlight on this too, and we can go back, Stephen, if I'm changing the subject from a point you wanted to add. It's not so much Sir Alistair, because we know that he doesn't like Thorne, and Thorne, detests Jon. Me, the real nail in the coffin is Ollie. Rewatching that ending episode, there is pure loathing in Ollie's face. I did not remember that when you see that he talks to Alistair Thorne, he has that interaction, and then he moves down the line. In my mind, I remembered that Ollie was like tearful, or like he doesn't say anything, but he was like remorseful that he's about to die. That boy is staring death daggers at Jon. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't say like, I would do it again, or you shouldn't have died. He's just, I hate you, Jon. And I think for me, that's a big part of why Jon is like, I'm done with the Night's Watch, because I don't like Alistair Thorne. I have to kill him because he's a terrible human being and he killed me. He orchestrated the people who killed me. Other people there are just people who went along with it. But for me, I think the nail, the last straw is he has to deal justice to Ollie, somebody who he really cared about. In the beginning of this episode, when Jon comes back, that's one of the first things he says is, they stabbed me. Kind of like we see his face as he's recalling it, and he goes, Ollie. It's the specific that the boy he thought he could trust most, who seemed innocent, was the one who was contributing to it.
So I do want to go back a little bit and go back to the original point here, because I do believe this was murder, and I don't believe that Jon cares about it that much, or it matters that much, because what is the first thing that Jon says when he wakes up and gets a hold of himself is, I did what I think was what I thought was right, and they murdered me for it. So what we are seeing almost is how Alistair Thorne, and Tyler's going to hate this, is almost a mirror image of Jon, just believing something else. Alistair Thorne's last words are, I hope that if I did this, if I knew what was going to happen, I had the courage to do it again. He's going to do what he thinks is right, and he's going to be murdered for it. And I think that is one thing that we are seeing in both ways, is that they have completely different sets of beliefs. And we know who's right and who's wrong. And spoiler alert, the guy who got murdered second was not right. But anyways, it's I think that it shows how similar their outlook and their bearing is between this horrible human being and Jon Snow, which is the paragon human being. They still have a same morality of ethics, and I think that is. I think it struck me, and I actually meant to mention that earlier. That the first thing Jon says when he wakes up is, "I did what I thought was right, and they murdered me for it." And the last thing, I keep wanting to call him Janos Slynt now. Who's the guy you hate? What's his name again?
Alistair Thorne.
Thank you. Alistair Thorne, the last thing Alistair Thorne says is basically the same thing.
I debated the same thing many times when I watched this show, because to me, I'm like, your watch can't end when you die, but plus you still have the authority to carry that out. On the other hand, considering the time that this is set in, I can see that most of the people there would not have a problem with seeing what they consider justice to be carried out. However, I also found it fascinating that Jon came back. Alistair Thorne seemed like he had it in the bag after that. Like, he seemed to have control of Castle Black. He was going to break down that door and get those guys out of there. Jon Snow came back, and suddenly all the power was back in his. And it kind of reminded me back to season 1. Cersei talked to was it Littlefinger about power for a brief moment, and power resides where people think it resides. Like, Jon Snow came back to life, and everything just put back into his hands immediately. He was able to get these guys and immediately execute them without any problems.
That's a fantastic callback.
And then I think Jon even makes the point too of like, and I think this bleeds over into the next episode a little bit there too, talking about like his own brothers murdered me. Like, how can he trust staying around these people anymore here if they did what they did based off of the fact that they didn't believe what he was doing was right. Gary, I think we were still at you. Did you have anything else?
That was my last note. So it's back to you, Tyler, to wrap up the episode.
The final thing I wanted to touch on is, and I had to look this up just to kind of confirm what this is. I mean, so the gift that Ramsay, Gary's favorite character, was given was the gift of Asha, the wildling lady from season 1, way back from season 1 when she was introduced, and little Rickon Stark, who is now not really little anymore, as well as the head of the direwolf dog, Shaggy Dog. And I remember this
the direwolf gone.
So we're down to 2 left, basically. Jon's ghost and then Nymeria, which is Arya's direwolf.
Spoiler alert, dude.
It's not a spoiler, Gary. Those are the 2 direwolves left in the world if you're paying attention.
I don't think that they've confirmed that Nymeria is still alive.
Nymeria. Like,
whatever.
Well, she's not dead, though. Like, they haven't.
She's not dead.
Until
but
you
we
see the
don't
body.
know that for sure. She's not introduced again till later.
That's a spoiler, Gary. Way to work.
She's dead in my heart.
So I read this again way back when, of kind of like the Shaggy Dog name actually had a meaning behind it then. And I'm looking this up on the internet, Gary.
Oh, that's right.
The internet never
according
lies.
to Merriam-Webster's.com, Shaggy Dog, it's an old-fashioned noun, a long story or joke with an ending that is disappointing or makes no sense.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I think I remember you mentioned this originally when we were watching the shows too, yeah.
So this may or may not have further
Dog.
implications in later episodes with some of the characters.
I think this has a happy ending.
You haven't been paying attention. All right. So, moving on then to episode 4. Oh, Steven's got a point.
I want to, interregnum between these 2 episodes, I want to bring up my own conspiracy theory that I have developed over the past 1 hour. And that conspiracy theory is that Arya, while she has been in the temple of whatever, has actually been with a whole crap ton of different people, all wearing the same face of Jaqen H'ghar, and there is no one Jaqen H'ghar. And that is my conspiracy theory, and I want anyone to try to disprove it. Because I'm sitting there thinking, why is there only one person and one waif in this entire temple? It makes no sense, unless they're all wearing the same face.
You've already seen Jack once, right?
I see other people
You've seen
in
some
the
of Jack
temple.
H'ghar's face die once.
In the temple? Oh,
Because she stole a face, and then somebody had to drink the potion, and it was the guy with Jack H'ghar's face.
And then there's also people who carry the dead bodies around.
Oh, well, the people who carry dead bodies don't matter. We're talking like main people, like not NPCs.
This is a great, well thought out theory for being an hour old.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
You got scorn from
And that is the
Gary.
last time you
Right.
see NPCs in the faceless area.
Moving on now to episode 4, Book of the Stranger. Sansa arrives at Castle Black. Tyrion makes a deal with the slave masters. Jorah and Dario sneak into Vaes Dothrak. Ramsay sends a letter to Jon. Theon arrives at Pike. Cersei and Olenna Tyrell plot against the High Sparrow. So, I'm just going to start off with the way the episode opened up here again, with Jon Snow is basically getting ready to leave. I'm going to kind of come back to that part there, but then Jon and Sansa are basically reunited for, I believe, if I remember reading this correctly here too, this is like the first time those actors interacted together at all throughout the entire show. Not even
Really?
back in season 1, because the only chance they may have had to interact was about episode 1, because then after that, Sansa joins Ned to head to, King's Landing.
King's
There we
Landing.
go. And I will say, like, the music at this part is just amazingly emotional and everything like that, because these are two characters
Wells with the
swells with everything. This is two characters who have gone through a lot, who are now reunited from their same family.
When just a question, when Ned introduces his children to Robert in the first episode, is John's not introduced at all. So he's not even in that scene.
Yep.
And I was going to agree with Tyler that, like, I didn't know. I was like, I didn't think these characters ever interacted. But yes, if it is actually proven, like, that's very funny. 6.5 seasons in, and two main characters have never talked. I don't know. It's just very interesting.
it's like a Lord of the Rings Legolas and Frodo thing, where the only thing that Legolas says in the entire trilogy to Frodo is "and my bow."
So
Ooh.
my question kind of then
Back to you, Tyler.
backs up a little bit here. Jon wanting to leave here, and then this kind of also bleeds into the conversation he has with Sansa. Is it kind of right that he's all of a sudden allowed to just say, "Oh, I don't want to be Lord Commander anymore. I don't want to be here at Castle Black anymore. I'm gone"? Because he talks with Sansa there basically about how he's tired of fighting, that all he's done since he got there was fight. So, Nick, lead us off.
Is he? Yes, all he has done is fight. Is he allowed to? I say yes. He is the anomaly. He's come back from the dead. Nobody's ever done that before. So as far as what he's allowed to do, I think he's allowed. Will he get to? No. The way the show is designed, the way that we've seen how the story arcs play out, just like Sir Davos said, no, it's his job, unfortunately, to go figure out how to fail again. He has to keep trying. And again, from what we know at this point in the story, he is his father's son. Dark blood flows through him. He's going to do the noble thing. He's going to do the honorable thing. I think he's like packing with Ed, getting ready to leave. But then when Sansa comes and she starts talking to him about what he should do, I think it's already decided at that point that he knows this is what he's going to do. He just doesn't want to do it, which is where the defiance kind of comes from as those interactions play on. Amanda?
This was actually one of the questions I had written down too. Like at this point, Jon has died for his oath, for his brothers on the Night's Watch, for his beliefs. Is he abandoning his post now? Technically, no, because by the rules, like you said, he's the anomaly. By the rules, he's free. However, I don't know how he's going to explain that, like, to anyone outside of Castle Black. That he's going to show up and they're going to be like, you just deserted the Night's Watch, you're a deserter, you're going to get put to death. He can explain to them, oh, I already died and came back. Who's going to believe it?
Right.
But also, just knowing his character, I can understand feeling like, and you see him feel free for that 1 second when someone asks him, where are you going to go? And he goes someplace warm. And you see that little wistful, like, oh, that'll be nice, won't it? But almost as if he knows it's not going to end up happening. He's got too much character of being a noble person, being a good person, being honorable built into him. However, I must point out that I don't know if it really counts as the first time someone's come back to life. There's a whole bunch of people north of the wall that came back to life.
You gotta change of eye color and everything too.
Mic drop.
Snap.
All right. So I will now punt it over. Amanda, get your questions in here.
Back to Danny. After what I felt like was a whiny last episode and a whiny start to this episode, Danny finally has this moment of where like she is strong and she is powerful, and I just had the observation of just most of the time so far throughout the entire series, she's proven able to win people and followers wherever she goes, even when she appears to have nothing, when she appears to have fallen. There's been at least 2 different times now where she, like here to the Cal, she looked like she had nothing. They had complete power over her. Same thing when when Khal Drogo died, she looked like she had nothing. Like she's able to win people to her side all the time. That was my observation there. I don't really have a question. Thoughts?
I guess, are you talking about then the ending scene there with Danny, or?
Yeah, sorry, I kind of skipped to the ending. And I'm sure Steven has a lot to say since she's his favorite person.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, I do find it fascinating. She was sound, she was strong and powerful, she had a good thing, whereas before she was just kind of what I thought was pretty whiny. Instead, she was like, you guys are gonna do this. I've got this. You're not powerful enough. I am. And, I bought it. She totally was. She had them in the palm of her hand. She had the power over them.
So this is more of a book question to start here. At the end of Danny's story, is she at the point where she's going to be captured by the Dothraki then? Like, she hasn't been taken all the way to Vaes Dothrak yet?
No, I don't think so. I think you're right. It's when I think the last thing for her chapter is like Cal Pono maybe rides up. Like they ride up to her, and that's it. It doesn't even say capture. Presumably she's captured.
Yeah, basically the Dothraki show up, surround her, and then that's kind of it. Okay. My only other comment then basically on the ending is, again, touching on the music of it just being fucking awesome there, of it swelling up with just power and emotion and stuff like that. Here's Danny basically uniting pretty much essentially the Dothraki all underneath her command. She's shown ultimate power there basically by being a strong person to take care of the other Cals there.
I don't know who's the composer for this show, but they did their job.
Ramin Djawadi.
Yep, the one who did everything in
Westworld.
Westworld as well.
Yes. And he did Pacific Rim as well, too.
Did he really?
Yep.
And now that you say that, you're right. I'm thinking about his the music on. Yeah, you're right.
All right, you have anything else, Amanda?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay. Steven.
So the big thing that I wanted to touch on in this episode is diplomacy and how diplomacy is getting thrown under the rug here. So Amanda and I were talking about this while we're watching the show. Up to now, this show has been a mix of espionage, diplomacy, and fighting military stuff, and that's what makes it so awesome. And at this point, they seem to kind of go out of their ways to make diplomacy look bad, dumb, stupid, elsewise. And it comes in the form of Tyrion doing the Slaver's Bay talks and proposing a couple different measures, which, in all honesty, are very well thought out and very good kind of ideas. Giving a 7-year thing to phase out slavery. I mean, of course you want it done now, but if you're going to do it without doing war, that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. But then after he gets through all these talks and whatnot, it kind of, the show goes on to kind of smear him and go, well, he was just naive little whatever it is. And nobody trusts him. Nobody's going to go along with this. And it goes, I believe the show goes out of its way to kind of pull the rug out of under diplomacy and goes, no, if you're going to engage in diplomacy anymore in this show, you're going to look like an idiot. And it takes away a strong feature of what I thought was a very complicated. Some of the diplomacy things that have happened before in this are very complicated, and they add a lot to the depth of the show. And I think it takes away a lot of depth. Amanda.
Steve, like he said, we were talking about this earlier, and I really do agree. I think Tyrion is given a lot of grief in this for it. But at the very least, this is a waiting game as they do these negotiations, which that waiting only serves to help Marine, because these people are on their doorstep and they're waiting for Daenerys to come back. There are so many other steps and other avenues this could go on. I just don't feel like Tyrion's given enough credit for looking at that. They're just like, no, we only have one option: fighting or not fighting. Even if you're gonna disagree with each other, you can sit there and negotiate and waste time all you want to, and that time's gonna serve you. Tyler?
Would we say, though, maybe it's, how do I want to kind of say this? Because, we all, I'm sure, at this group here can come to the conclusion that slavery is bad. And this ties back to, Gary gives us the maybe symbol here, but who knows with Gary.
Joking.
This ties back to the conversations we've had about Daenerys with her kind of quest and everything like that, not really having a plan or anything like that of, she took over Marine, but she didn't really have a plan or policy in place of what to do when she liberated the slaves. But then the pushback from Tyrion's plan is coming from Melisandre, no, not Missandei and Grey Worm there, because Tyrion has basically said, we're going to go back to slavery now for 7 years to these two people in the room who were former slaves to these masters. They know what it's like, whereas Tyrion is presenting this option having only ever been a slave, air quotes, for a day or so. So he doesn't really know, he doesn't really understand the true horrors of what he's now putting people back into, even though he thinks it only lasts 7 years. So that's where I feel like the pushback on Tyrion's plan is coming. Obviously, yes, the diplomacy aspect there, Tyrion is trying from the diplomacy angle there, but he maybe went about it without a true understanding of the region there compared to Westeros.
I think that's an accurate assessment, but I also think that I feel like the show kind of set him up in that regard, because Tyrion has proven himself, even newcomer to the region, as a very adept player in the region. He would understand that. And that's what I think, at least. I think that he has gone so far as when talking to Daenerys, he has a bit of insight that other people in this area, I think we've talked about it before, that statescraft. That everyone else is giving him military advice, he's giving statescraft advice. And I don't believe that. Basically, I feel like he would have done it better if the show didn't want to rip the rug out from under him here. If the show didn't want to basically put him up to knock him down, it would have been done better. That's my opinion. And it's not the show, I shouldn't say that. It might be the book, who knows, but...
Well, I guess even at this point in time, Tyrion hasn't met Daenerys yet either. But to maybe push back a little bit on your point, though, Stephen, of him talking with Daenerys, so he's not talking to somebody from that region specifically. Daenerys kind of still feels like she has the Westeros values there, so he hasn't quite proven that he has a grasp of this place there. So he's coming in with the idea of, this is what we could maybe get away with in Westeros. This will probably work here. Everybody's the same all around the world. So that would be my one pushback against that thought, though.
That's fair.
Amanda?
Stephen kind of said what I was about to say, is that Tyrion's kind of one of the first advisors for Dany that isn't strictly military. I'd say the other one would be Missandei, but she's watched from such a violent place all her life since being a slave that I don't know. Like, they've seen so much war. Tyrion's the first one who's not advocating destroy or not destroy. He's got not 3 or 4 other options. There's lots of other options. So I think it's kind of harder for them to see those other things. And yet, I think you've got a good point. Like, Tyrion, he was a slave, but you can't be prepared for the true horrors of that kind of institution. And even just the going through it for a few days was enough to show him how bad it was, but not the same. Miss Sonda even said it's not enough to understand. But I do still think that they have nothing to lose by just trying the diplomatic post.
I guess maybe too the issue is maybe where I'm coming from too is not trying the diplomatic approach, but maybe Tyrion's terms maybe should have been better thought out or something like that. I don't know. I mean, obviously, yes, more could have been probably done in the discussion there, but this was more for the show of trying to keep stuff moving along here instead of having a long drawn out discussion on the political side of things there.
I mean, I say these arguments with knowing how it ends too, but like I would be interested in seeing or in knowing exactly like if Tyrion meant exactly what he was saying, or if he knew that it might get changed or destroyed. Who knows? Stephen?
So I guess my offer to that would be, I think that Tyrion could have come to this with a better approach, and what I think would have been a better approach if they didn't, like I say, want to set him up as a fall guy, and that would have been his task. What he's trying to accomplish here is stopping support for the rebels in Meereen. It's not to overthrow all these other things. So what he could have done in this diplomatic, conference is basically say, stop providing this support. We can have these ongoing conversations, maybe offer something, but not go right after slavery even. Obviously, that would cause an uproar. But he would know that would cause an uproar. If his goal is to stop the support of the rebels, that's what he would have focused on. And he didn't. It focused on something much bigger, much more tantalizing, and something that, like I keep saying, I feel sets him up as just to fall on his face and show that, haha, diplomacy can't work. You have to use violence.
I was going to say, like, I can't remember who mentioned it, that, like, I think it was Amanda who said, like, he might be saying all these things with very much under the understanding that when Daenerys is back, she's not going to agree to any of this. But if you break down the system that is supporting the revolution, like, you've dismantled that just long enough that when, like, you actually have a united force, you can go through and sweep out the revolution and then go, I guess I didn't really have the authority to do that. Sorry. I guess you're not slavers anymore. Too bad. You agreed, because I think he came from King's Landing. Everyone lies. So I don't think that he has any intent of promising this, but he can't probably explain that to Missandei or Grey Worm, because that maybe would underride his credibility with them, that he just admits that he's lying to everyone. Steven?
Okay, but that adds a different dynamic to the show, because you have to, in a show, you don't have those thought bubbles. Your character has to say it out loud at some point, even if it's just to themselves, by themselves, so that you know what's happening.
I guess, he doesn't have anyone to say. He could say it to Varys. Also, in all of these conversations, where the fuck is Varys?
Yeah, who knows? He would have been there. I mean, but that's kind of my point. This feels like it was a setup. It doesn't feel like it was a honest-to-God attempt at diplomacy, an honest-to-God attempt at trying to solve this situation. It was an attempt at validating Grey Worm and what is her name again? Missandei. Validating their idea that everything can only be solved with violence, and making Tyrion look naive for saying violence isn't the only answer.
All right. Whose initial question was that?
That was mine.
All right. Did you have anything else?
No, that was my big one.
Okay. Nick, you're up.
Europe. I would kind of have to agree with Steven in this sense. I do feel like that there's a lot. What? I can agree with Steven.
I was just
Theory.
talking about your Europe joke.
Europe. I think that it. I do think that there's a lot to be said about other options on the table rather than just the current advisors that Daenerys has always want to fight, and that Tyrion does have a couple options he's trying to do, and yeah, to him, I've suffered at the hands of slavery. But there's that great interaction where they're walking through the streets, and he says to Missandei, "It was long enough, long enough to know." Missandei replies, "Not long enough to understand." It's this great interchange that she is versed. She knows what it's like and how bad it can be. And while Tyrion did suffer and it was unfortunate, it was nothing that as bad as it could have been for the horrors of it. To say another 7 years for those slaves and what that life would look like for them. I really didn't have a whole lot on that interchange with them. I do think that when Tyrion is trying to talk to the slavers, they are already being antagonistic because they want to speak to Daenerys, or they want to say they want them to just leave. They don't want to try and treat with them. But I think that Tyrion, at least all of them, are onto something when Tyrion says, "Make peace with your enemies, not just with your friends." I don't think that it's going to be that easy. I feel like, knowing that they were funding the Sons of the Harpy, even when they say that they weren't, Tyrion still says they'll cut off your support for them anyways. I feel like it's not going to be that easy. They're not just going to be like, "Sure, we agree to terms with you. Whatever you say, we'll bow down to." So I think that there's more there that could happen, even knowing how it goes. Like, rewatching that scene, it just seems very one-sided, one-handed. So yeah, I really didn't have much in that interaction.
Did you have anything else for the episode you wanted to talk about?
A little bit on Jorah. I did have a note on Jorah and Aryo Naharis sneaking through the city when they're trying to get into Vaes Dothrak to go rescue Daenerys, not knowing that she is formulating a plan of her own, or trying to formulate a plan. They're getting rid of all of their armor, and Daario sees Jorah has the stone arm, forming on his skin, and all he says is, "You know what happens?" And Jorah says, "I know what happens," and that's where they leave it. There's not like a "you're screwed" kind of conversation, or "what are you going to do about it? Who are you going to tell? Does Dany know?" It's just, "Know how bad this is." "Yeah, I know how bad this is," and that's where they leave it. So it's an understanding between the two of them. Well, even too, like the moment before, like Aryo is taunting Jorah, saying, "You could not ride the dragon. Maybe 20 years ago you could have ridden her." And he's saying, "If I kill you, then I'm the old man. I'm the shit who killed an old man. Or if you kill me, then I'm the shit that was killed by an old man." I think that those two do respect each other. At the same time, they do not see eye to eye. And so, again, kind of going back to everybody that Dany has around her is violent. That's kind of just who they are. How toxic is that? Do we think that those two could get along? I mean, they respect each other enough to survive, but how toxic is that relationship, do you see?
Here's a bonus speculation. If Barristan Selmy survived the Battle of the Revolution, would he have been in that conversation?
I think
I don't know if
absolutely.
it's been confirmed that he actually died in the book, but I think I'd question, like you mentioned, that everyone around her is very violent. He's probably the most elder statesman of her advisors, and he just disappeared. But if he was there, would have it turned out differently. That's all I had. Steven?
Muted, sir.
You're muted,
Steven.
But seeing your face, realized it was great.
I think that they could survive in a kind of an antagonistic relationship. I don't think they'd ever have some sort of a partnership or a bond. I mean, maybe we might be able to get there if they have to go through their own Brienne and Jaime story, but I don't think they're going to get their own Brienne and Jaime story.
Buddy cop feature.
Buddy cop sort of thing. No. And I think that if it goes on, at some point, one will kill the other. I think at the very end of it, that's what would happen. For one reason or another. I think Barristan Selmy would be a different situation. I don't think, honestly, Barristan Selmy would get in the way of them because he's not in a love triangle. And that's what's really going to get at the nexus of that murder she wrote sort of thing.
Ooh.
Is Barristan Selmy...
Wow. What's the nexus, Steven? What's the nexus?
The nexus of the murder she wrote.
But I got it.
Barristan Selmy's not trying to ride the dragon, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So he'd be fine.
It's a fairly offensive term.
That's what was said!
Not,
So
not as
sensitive,
bad
dude.
as the
To
lady.
point out my very not dirty mind when I heard him say, maybe 20 years ago you could ride the dragon. I thought maybe like he's saying like to ride one of the secondary or third physical other dragons, like be a dragon rider for Daenerys.
Oh,
And
that's
then
so
I'm, like,
sweet.
after
Sweet
it talks
summer
some more,
child.
I'm like, oh, they're talking
You're
about the
so
whoopee.
naive. That's so cute.
I am so cute.
Talking about the whoopee.
Talking about what is this? The match game now? Or no, the newlywed game. That's what it is. The newlywed game.
Anyway, back to you. I don't know who is.
I think we're still on Nick.
That was really all I had. I didn't have too terribly much towards the end of this one.
All right. Over to Gary.
Yeah. I just had a couple points. I had forgotten that Brienne actually admits that she executed Stannis in front of his former two generals. But I didn't. I've also forgetting on the rewatch. I don't know if either of them are really that loyal anymore. Like the Red Woman is completely thrown all of her chips into Jon Snow's basket, and I don't know where the Onion Knight is. Like he's still loyal to Stannis. He still loves Stannis, but he also realized that Stannis was fighting a losing battle. So I'm curious if that's going to come back to haunt them. Tyler.
So I think it was more of maybe because you get that shot on Davos there of him just kind of sadness kind of washing over him. I think it's maybe more of the loss of kind of a friend or a companion for him, because while he may not have agreed with a lot of what Stannis had done, he was in a friendly enough relationship with Stannis there that it hurt to hear he died, and then also to the princess and the queen also did not essentially make it out of that situation alive there. So it's just kind of all of that. And I think it's more too, especially the princess too, is another thing that really hits him hard there. Just all that sadness and grief just kind of hitting him there. Steven.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially for Stannis, it's also the classic tragedy trope, right? I feel like Davos kind of could have seen this coming, and he was powerless to stop it. And that's the sad thing for him, is he is seeing the culmination of what he has been watching, and that is Stannis going down a dark route, which has no good ending. And guess what? It didn't end well. And so I think Davos isn't surprised, but he is saddened, and that's it. It is what it is at that point.
Where does Davos go from here? He's a man without a country, a man without a leader.
Oh, I think he's found himself a leader.
I think so too.
You don't give that sort of pep talk to just anyone, Gary.
I'd give that sort of pep
Think-
talk. I'm a liar. I hold no loyalty to anyone.
And even when John was dead, he was willing to make his claim in that room and defend, maybe not Jon's body, but make his last stand with the random Night's Watch brothers against the foreseeable, evil Night's Watch brothers and Alistair Thorne. So I think that, I think he definitely has his new asphyxiation. What?
You think he's gonna take the black?
Asphyxiation? He's
Asphyxiation.
choking himself?
Oh boy!
Exactly. Yeah, got dark there. Asphyxiation in Jon Snow. What were you saying, Gary?
You think he's gonna take the black?
No, nobody takes the black there willingly anymore. All right. I think, are we still with you, Gary, or?
Oh yeah, it was with me.
Unfortunately.
So I forgot Brienne had admitted that. Dario Naharis on the rewatch. The knife, he's like, I really like this knife. When you look at the knife, it's like a naked lady. Is the hilt.
You just now.
It's also the knife that he threw at the guy when they took over Marine. Not Marine. Unkai, maybe. One of the other cities. And the guy was on a horse and he was going to run him down. He just whipped it at the horse, killed him. It's that same knife.
When he whipped his dick out and peed.
Yes, to bring it back to your favorite part. Yes.
I mean, they were fighting, but he also...
They were fighting, but
the more interesting part of the story. Anyway, I thought that was super cool, because you're because they could have just made it oh yeah, I really like this knife. And on the initial watch, I was like, oh yeah, he really likes that knife. And it's probably real good balance. And then you look at it more and you're like, oh, it's a naked lady hilt. That's interesting. I wonder he really likes that knife. That's all I have. And then the last scene with the burning lady, I was questioning if it's supposed to be symbolic that her hair doesn't burn, because the Khalasars follow the people with the longest braids, and she has a braid when she walks out of the fire. I don't know. Just the random.
I mean, in the books, her hair does burn off and stuff like that. I think this is just a show. Same reason why they didn't slice Tyrion's nose off. It's just a cost-saving thing, probably, or just...
Holy shit! Holy buckets! I can't imagine if you had to wear prosthetic for 8 seasons. They'd have to pay so much for that prosthetic. Anyway, that is all I had for this episode. It was a fun episode, but not a whole lot of interesting notes. So back to you, Tyler.
The last point I kind of wanted to talk about there was the small council chamber there towards the end, when there is Kevin Lannister, Olenna Tyrell in there, and then Jaime and Cersei walk in to talk to them. And the information is dropped that the High Sparrow is planning to also do the Walk of Atonement with Marjorie there. And that's when they all flip out no, we're not going to have this happen. We're going to kind of start maybe putting aside our differences and working together here to help one another out in this situation. I'm kind of wondering here, because the information is made to kind of, I think, believe that Tommen is the one who heard it from the High Sparrow, and then Tommen related it to Cersei. Is this another thing of the High Sparrow playing a bigger game to try and pit the royal rich families against the lower underclass members of the society there in King's Landing?
You mean that the rich families can somehow get away without the Walk of Atonement?
They're above the laws of gods and men there, basically, and that this detail was planted. He may not actually want to go through with the Walk of Atonement anyways for Marjorie, but they threw that information out to get the rich families all riled up to do something stupid, pretty much, and attack the High Sparrow and everything. Steven.
I think that I'm not entirely sure that was the outcome that he's expecting, but he definitely dropped that information for a reason, and he knew that where it was going to be relayed. I think that, yeah, he might have been trying to get them to move, thinking that the first person to move is going to be the loser in this contest of wills. And whether it be a dumb move or whether it be a smart move, it's just the first person to move. And I don't know what his overall play was supposed to be or what he was really trying to think about there, but I do believe it was deliberate.
Or was it a test? Was he testing Tommen to see if, when asked by the High Septum to keep a secret, if he can keep a secret from his family, his wife's family, like would he choose the gods over like his family? Would he choose the realm over his family? Tyler's shaking his head no. He thinks I'm full of it.
Not to get into really too deep of spoilers for what's to come, but I don't think that would be his intention. Nick?
I completely forgot what happens next. Nick, you're up.
Europe.
Asia.
Asia. I agree with Tyler. I don't think that the High Sparrow is that mind games. He's not that deep into it. He's just trying to give information. I think that he's wise. He understands how other people are trying to play the game, but he's not trying to be manipulative. I think he believes what he believes. He's very ardent in his tenets, but I don't believe that he's trying to undermine other people or test them necessarily. People need to break and succumb to his beliefs, is how he sees it. I don't think he's trying to manipulate other people into his beliefs.
So I want to issue a correction here. My correction is that you said what Tyler said, but was completely inaccurate, because Tyler 100% said that he thought that there was manipulation going on.
Oh. Missed that then, in that subtext. Well, then Tyler's wrong. Full of it. I mean, I fully agree that the High Sparrow is dangerous, and he knows that he's threatening the status quo of these rich families. That's 100%. He's aware of that.
You guys make him sound like a great, like a very much a chess player, and I just think he's a delusional, crazy person.
No, I very strongly believe he is both. I very strongly believe he is a very crazy strategician.
He's a cobbler by trade. Like,
that doesn't matter. Like, you have really brilliant people out there who had kind of weird, upbringings, and you have also psycho people out there who have had weird upbringings. I mean, the classic example of
delusional doesn't mean you can't be dangerous.
Yeah, though the classic example of Mussolini was a failed soccer player and Hitler was a failed artist. I mean, neither of them. I don't want to say those are not the brilliant examples. Those are the psycho examples. I want to point that out real quick.
Good save, Steven.
Thank you.
Good save.
Feeling sad that you're bad at soccer, it doesn't matter because soccer doesn't matter. So,
man.
Jeez, Gary, shooting guns out there.
All right.
The High Sparrow walks a fine line for the show of us not being, in shows, if somebody's acting a different character in the show, like for the audience, they usually make it real obvious that this person is obviously acting, and none of the other characters pick it up. The High Sparrow is one that we're still not sure. Like, he could be manipulating. He could be honest to God, a good person who wants all this. But to me, he's too good. He's too good at it to the point where I think he's got to be manipulating it because he's walking that line too thin. So, like, I'm sorry, but he's got to be manipulating them.
I do think that's what makes him such a good character as well.
Oh yeah,
that
absolutely.
you continue to debate his motivations after the entire thing has been done, and you don't know for sure. I think that's fantastic.
His line, not in this episode, the previous episode, where he's like, "Oh, can I sit down?" was a great ploy to have.
Oh yeah,
come and like sit down next to him rather than like standing adversarially. Tyler.
So yeah, it was a total great ploy of like showing Tommen is still the king. He's still the power there. Basically, he still bows. I'm going to throw air quotes in there so the audience can know. He bows to Tommen, the ruler there. Basically, that he is below Tommen there in the structure of power. Steven.
See, and I would even think that. So that was a kind of there's an idea where you stand when the president stands, right? And you stand when the great ruler stands, and it's a show of respect. And so I think it's kind of a power play. Honestly, it is a showing that, hey, I'm old and feeble. Can I sit? And you're supposed to stand in the presence of the king. You're not supposed to sit. You're not supposed to do whatever else. But yeah, okay, sure, you can sit. And hey, that's one step up on him. That's one power play up. The second, or actually the first one that preceded that was the High Sparrow waves away his guards and expects the king to do the same. These are power plays. These are one-upping your opponent a little bit by a little bit, bringing them from the status of king and pope to the status of the same. And it's a very clever game he plays. And that's obviously all in the last episode, but it's a very clever game.
I saw a lot of that too. I was initially watching it thinking it was mostly just de-escalating the situation because Tommen kept stepping in on him with the guards drawing swords right behind him. So it may have started as something where he didn't want, the king's guards to get, itchy trigger fingers, as it were. But to de-escalate the situation. But yeah, when he says, "Can I sit down?" He probably is older and feeble. Like he makes a comment or something about his knees. I think that it does help bring Tommen back to the moment that he's just trying to have a conversation, or it's under the guise that he's trying to have a conversation. Whereas Tommen has gone from storming in saying you will release Marjorie with guards to now he's just sitting on a bench talking to an old guy. It's totally undercut the authority that he's pretended to have.
Fair enough.
All right. Great discussions again. Anything else we want to touch on for this episode or the last episode too to wrap up this recording?
Lady Temple.
Jack and Hagar is multiple people.
She shed.
She shed.
All right. So for next time, we will be watching Season 6, Episode 5, The Door, and then Episode 6, Blood of My Blood. There'll be some more heartache possibly coming our way for this.
There's a little bit of heartache coming, and I'm not looking forward to it.
All right.
Is there more Fear of the Revolution coming? Because that's
Totally. He's going to be with us forever. All the episodes.
He actually becomes ruler of the Westeros.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like he was probably part of that Vegas bet for who's gonna take the Iron Throne.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.